Good evening and welcome to Psychedelic Healing. I am your host, Sonia Cotto, nurse anesthesiologist and mental health advocate, here to discuss psychedelics. Tonight, I am honored to have Charles Patti. He is the Chief Brand Officer for Myself Wellness. It's a cutting-edge ketamine clinic out in Bonita Springs. They are a pioneer in the psychedelic space. They guide clients through the healing process with psychedelic ketamine therapy coupled with healthy lifestyle practices. Myself Wellness treats those struggling with pain, trauma, anxiety, depression, and PTSD, along with many other mental health conditions. They employ a large team of 17 professionals, and to date, they have helped over 1,000 individuals find healing through over 7,000 ketamine treatments to date. In addition to Myself Wellness, Charles Patti has also co-founded the nonprofit Warriors of Consciousness. I love it. Along with Myself Wellness President Christina Thomas. The organization's mission is to help those who are struggling with anxiety, PTSD, depression, and other mental health conditions and cannot afford the psychedelic ketamine treatments. To date, that organization has helped over 770 individuals. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you very much for having me, Sonia. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's been great, actually, both of us being in the ketamine space. We've kind of connected multiple times and been able to heal, people on the east and west coast of Florida. So it's been great, especially knowing that I have a clinic to refer. I have patients that have been wanting to travel from the west coast, Naples, Fort Myers, and having, your clinic being able to be a resource to send them there, and then vice versa, right? Like having to drive 2 to 3 hours is not conducive to then go back home after a ketamine treatment. So it's been a great partnership there.
No, for sure. There's like not a ton of people in the space where we would refer people out, and we love sending like the vice versa thing, because what you guys are doing over there is amazing as well.
Thank you. I wanted to kind of touch more on a personal note. I always am curious as people's whys. I know you've kind of struggled with addiction in your past, and really psychedelics have, transformed your life. And I kind of wanted to go deep into, what psychedelics were your experiences and what your healing aspect was in each of those.
For sure. So, I guess I'll kind of start at the beginning, where when I was young, my dad died when I was 6. He passed away from lung cancer. And that was a really traumatic experience for me. I was really young and I didn't know what was exactly going on. I didn't know how to process it very well. And my first stepdad directly after that was an alcoholic. And so it was common for me to be able to have sips of his beer and wine and stuff like that, even when I was 6 and 7, moving on 8 years old. And by the time I was 10 or 11, he was getting drunk with me on the weekends. And so, I was kind of set up with that example of this is the norm, and it's perfectly normal to get drunk all the time. And I kind of emulated that into my early teens. And then I started experimenting with cocaine and Xanax around 14 years old, different pain pills and things like that. By the time I was 16, I had got arrested for my first DUI, because every single time my stepdad got into the car, every single time he got into the car, he either had a big glass of wine or a beer on him and stuff like that. And so, it was kind of like a bad example. And I just kept on moving in that direction. By the time I was 18, my guy who I was getting cocaine from started getting Oxycontin 80s. That was really the big downfall for me. That was when things really got out of control and unmanageable. I had experimented with Percocet and Somas and things like that, but that was a completely different beast. And, that was the first time I had ever taken something and actually started going through withdrawals and getting sick from not taking it. And, after I was about 19, everybody that I was hanging out with was either doing cocaine or smoking crack, and, a lot of heroin use was going on, Oxy 80s. When I first started doing them, they were $20 a pill. And that really wasn't that outrageous. So it was easy access. And then it evolved into, now it's 25 a pill, and then it was $40 a pill. And before I knew it, it was $1 a milligram. So they were $80 a pill. And, the guy who I had been getting my stuff from, he started sniffing heroin because he said it was cheaper and way better. And so, I tried that and, swore that I would never inject it, but, things evolved and, it was so expensive to the point where like I was doing a gram of heroin a day. I was like, snorting an 8-ball of coke a day. And I saw my buddies using a very small portion of what I was consuming and using it intravenously. And it seemed to last them a lot longer and be way cheaper. And so I took that next step and, it was a battle from like 19 forward, like I would get clean and I would sober up. I would always end up relapsing, and so I struggled with opiates and cocaine and alcohol abuse and benzodiazepine abuse on and off until I was like in my early 30s. And it's the same thing where a lot of people have the stories out there where like, I wanted to get clean so badly. And like, I just never felt right. Like I would stop taking the drugs and then all of my symptoms of depression, anxiety, PTSD would end up coming back. And I'd go to meetings and like the most time I had ever put together like for substantial sobriety was like 6 months long, and then after the 6 months, I was like, listen, if I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life, I'm just going to go get high again because like I was miserable, and
you've been numbing yourself since you were 6, never really dealing with that loss, that grief.
100%,
Wow.
And what it is like, the drugs, the alcohol, the food, I was addicted to everything, gambling, sex, you name it. And like, it was just a symptom of an underlying issue or like a lot of underlying issues. I had been diagnosed as being bipolar and having OCD, clinically depressed, anxiety, on strings of pharmaceutical medications throughout my life, and nothing ever worked. So like, I always resorted back to drinking alcohol and using these other substances. And it was really like I had used a lot of different psychedelic compounds recreationally growing up. And, like I had some great times on them, but like nothing therapeutic ever happened. I was always in a party setting, and like I had some good conversations on MDMA, I guess, but like nothing ever super, And it was one night when I was like really in the middle of my addiction where it was like the synchronicity of the universe, and a guy that I was getting MDMA from on the other on your coast drove over to my coast and brought another guy with him that had some, and it's a dissociative just like ketamine. It's just a longer acting dissociative. It's a research chemical, and it's basically just like ketamine except for it's just a longer dissociation. And so I took some MDMA, and right before it kicked in, the guy busted out a bag of the other stuff, basically like ketamine on steroids. And I did a couple key bumps of it. And the next thing I knew, the entire room broke down to a quantum state. I stood up and I looked at everyone and I was like, man, if I didn't know what the universe was about before, I know what it's about now, man. I was like, everything's made of energy and I'm so full of positive energy right now. I sat down and it looked like I was in a scene out of the Matrix. Like all of the atoms were humming and vibrating and everything. Everything was green, but like at different frequencies and densities. And I sat down and I looked up, and a geometric portal started opening above me in the ceiling. I felt like I was being lowered down in a slingshot, and I got skyrocketed out of my body into deep space.
Wow.
I thought I was dead. I was like, oh, well, I died. I'm like out in the middle of the universe. And listen, this is going to sound crazy, but just bear with me here. And I realized that like I wasn't just out in the middle of the universe, but I was looking through a window, like out into the middle of the universe. And I turned around and I was on a ship. And there was higher dimensional beings there. And basically they started telepathically communicating with me, telling me that I needed to get my life together and that I needed to stop taking drugs because I was supposed to heal so I could help people heal. And I ended up having a full-blown burning bush experience that night where Jesus ended up coming out. And I put and listen, I'm not religious. I'm a very spiritual person. It was just my experience. So I'm not standing here trying to preach to anybody. I put my hand on Jesus's arm and it was like an explosion of the most loving, euphoric feeling I had ever felt in my life. And like I had a crippling fear of death until that night because my dad died, and that was like a very traumatic thing. It used to be so bad. I'd wake up every day and I'd be like, "Am I gonna die today?" And listen, like, I got all of those messages that night, and no, I did not put all of them into place in my life. I didn't have anybody to integrate the experience with. My life didn't change that much. I actually felt more alone after that. And started researching like ET experiences and ketamine and trying to figure out what happened to me. And DMT and the spirit molecule kept popping up over and over again by Rick Strassman. So I watched that movie like 50 times, trying to integrate myself and trying to make sense of what happened to me that night. And I found out there was a lot of other people that had similar experiences to the ones that I had. And so, it was a process like over the next 10 years where like, I'd put a little bit of time together. I'd kind of relapse, but I was married at that time. And then my ex-wife and I split up because I wanted to get sober and she wasn't ready yet. And so I remembered like I had got some DMT before that, like after that first experience, like 6 months later, and I had some super profound experiences. And I was hooked on heroin at this time. And I was like, you know what, like I need to get some DMT and I need to smoke it so I can quit using this. And, the DMT synchronistically like landed into the equation. I smoked it and went to another universe, alternate universe where there's all these beings cheering and chanting for me, telling me it wasn't too late and that I could do it. And I came out of that experience and took a little bit of Suboxone, an ounce of cannabis, and locked myself in a room for a week and detoxed myself, and so like psychedelic medicine saved my life. They saved my life because they gave me the ability to love myself enough to actually want to change my life. It took my fear of death away. And, ever since then, I've been screaming from any soapbox that I can jump on and letting everybody know, like, because when you have that kind of experience or you have gone through your own personal hell like that, and then you find something and it rips you right out of it, like, you feel like if you don't tell anybody, then like, what was the point? Like, what did I go through that for? So, here we are.
And those experiences, wow, that I was actually kind of teary-eyed when you were telling me about that first experience. And I think that people do live in fear of death. So many people do. And, I usually don't tell my patients until after the fact, but you do experience death, right? And it's usually symbolic, metaphorical, but usually there's that fear, and you just get to release it. And that's something that's so beautiful in that experience, to have that and that messaging. That is an amazing story.
Thanks.
That's such an amazing story. And so many people are going through that.
Yeah.
Now.
The symbol for my self-wellness, like our actual like emblem, it's an ancient symbol for rebirth. And people have those death experiences at our facility a lot of the time, on the right doses of ketamine. My last ketamine treatment or like use of a psychedelic compound was like 4 years ago. And it was like after I did my ketamine sessions. And one of the reasons why I stopped doing anything, because like I had hundreds of psychedelic experiences. I started after those first experiences like that, those breakthrough experiences. I was like, okay, psychonaut. Like I'm deep diving. I'm going to figure out what's going on. I'm going to figure out what the universe was all about, all of this kind of stuff. So I was like, an interdimensional traveler at one time. But the thing is that on my last ketamine treatment, I died. And it wasn't the first time I had died. I had died on a lot of different psychedelic compounds. And for the listeners out there, not literally died. It's a death experience.
Right.
Yes. And, it's like, I made it through, like all of these years of substance abuse issues, heroin, crack, everything, and I took the ketamine and I died. And so I'm sitting there in like, the abyss of nothingness and the void. And I'm like, man, I took the ketamine and I died. I was like, I made it through everything, it's like I made it through every crazy experience that I had up to this point. And like, now I'm at a clinic and I took the ketamine and I died. And I was just like, oh man, I was like, this is awful, because like I have a beautiful woman in my life. And our son, Charlie, was only 18 months old at the time. And I was like, I got a beautiful baby boy. And we have a company that's helping people heal with psychedelics. And I took the ketamine. And I was like, man, I'd give anything to get it back. It was like this, I realized everything that I had that I was taking for granted up to that point. And then once I had it pop through my head again, like, man, I would give anything to get it back. No, I'm back in my body. And I was just like, all right, I'm done.
I've learned enough. I'm good.
Yeah, I don't need to die anymore. Like I get it now. And it's like, listen, like, it's my belief and like understanding that, I had a lot of oneness experiences that were all one collective consciousness. Separation is an illusion, that we're basically extensions of the divine, but we're all it. And I believe that we can manifest anything that we want, so as long as we just never give up, keep our vibration high, put positive energy out into the universe, use the laws of attraction, And so ever since then, I've just been on this mission to like help as many people as I possibly can. One of the reasons why we started the Warriors of Consciousness is because, a lot of people can't afford these kind of therapies. And, we've actually thank you for the beautiful intro, but we're actually coming up on like 10,000 treatments that we've done, in the last.
Amazing.
So it's pretty, from a guy who never thought that I was going to accomplish anything, and I thought that I was going to end up in prison or dead from my substance abuse issues, to completely turning it all around and being able to help people now and use my voice to spread the psychedelic gospel, basically. There is hope for people. Like, you don't have to suffer anymore. We have an FDA approved medication that's so safe that they give it to babies for surgery. And
yes,
at right doses, it's giving people some of the most profound psychedelic experiences a human being can have.
That's the important part. It's the right doses, because I see a lot of clinics opening up, and, there's, ketamine is so beneficial. It is so amazing, and it's very safe, obviously, if used appropriately. It saddens me with the whole Matthew Perry story, and all that, but obviously there are dangers. You should never be around water. We don't know the full extent of the story or what transpired in that. As long as he was not near water, he would still be alive today with that dose of ketamine.
I've said it for since we started and I did my ketamine experiences, I was like, water and ketamine don't mix. You literally get paralyzed.
Psychedelics and water don't mix, but especially ketamine, you're paralyzed. Exactly.
You can't move. You know what I'm saying? What happened is listen, Matthew Perry was on a couple different medications. He was on buprenorphine, which is like Suboxone. It's an opiate blocker. He was on lorazepam, which is, basically like Xanax. And, he was on an anesthetic dose of ketamine in a hot tub. And, I think he probably went into an anesthetic state, where he went into a disassociated state, and he, was probably having a beautiful experience and never came out of it.
Yeah, and just to clarify out there, an anesthetic dose, in clinics, we're giving very low dose. An anesthetic dose that I give in surgery, for trauma patients, we can do surgery on a patient on an anesthetic dose. I mean, their brain is awake, but they're not present because their brain is disconnected from their body. Their bodies don't move. They don't feel pain. They don't feel anything. They're, somewhere else. So he didn't suffer in his drowning, but that's how high of a dose he had. It was not a normal, therapeutic mental health dosing. That being said, there's also too low dosing. I've seen the research where it says, ketamine is, somewhat beneficial for mental health, but not much. And you look at the actual dosing that they give the patients, and it's 0.5 milligrams per kilogram, which is nice for therapy, right? To talk and go through, but it's not an actual therapeutic transformational dose. So you would need to definitely go up above 1 milligram. Some clinics, their max dose is 1 milligram per kilogram, but I regularly will definitely give way more than that,
we embrace the psychedelic experience. Like, I know
yes.
you guys as well. I mean, it wasn't a sub psychedelic dose of any of these medications that, are medicines that changed my life. It was these psychospiritual experiences that completely changed everything for me and really transformed me into the man that I am today. So, and one other thing is like, and listen, I get crap for saying this sometimes, but it is what it is like, I don't advocate for at-home ketamine either. I think it's a really bad idea. I've been saying for 4 years now, listen, I can give you 1 million positive ketamine stories. Okay. We can, both of us probably have tons of positive ketamine stories, but it's not those that make the headlines. It's the guy who's accidentally going to swan dive off of his balcony because he doesn't know what he's doing, or somebody that takes ketamine in water and then the entire world thinks that it's a dangerous medication now. And so, there's people that come out of treatments at our clinic, and if we weren't there to walk them to the bathroom, they would probably fall straight over on their face. And, that could
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that could happen in somebody's house, and their head could hit the corner of a bureau or something, and it's lights out. So it's like, I think that listen, I don't want people to suffer, and I want people to heal, and I'm not trying to block or bad, because listen, I'm not saying, listen, everybody's going to do what they're going to do anyways. Everybody's on their own individual healing journeys. But, the truth is that in an industry that's in its pre-infancy, I mean, like none of the actual hallucinogens are even FDA approved yet. So like all we have is ketamine, which isn't even a hallucinogen, it's a dissociative. And if we have a bunch of horror stories, it's going to be a big roadblock for us to gain access to these other life-saving modalities, in my personal.
Yeah, that's why I have this podcast, to educate people on safe dosing, safe practices, and all of that. And you know, I too am hesitant with at-home ketamine. I won't prescribe it for my patients, but I do understand the affordability. You know, that's, you know, why we're here talking today too about like how can we make this the universal healing for everyone, because mental health is still suffering. What we have right now is not working. We need to do something different, and psychedelics has so much potential to heal, but how can we make it affordable and accessible? That's why I love your Warriors Foundation to support and, you know, provide this treatment for all these people that are suffering. But there's so many more people that aren't veterans that are still suffering.
No, for sure. And just so everybody knows, like our nonprofit isn't pigeonholed just to veterans. We treat all kinds of people. Like literally,
Okay.
we had a lady show up at our clinic like a couple of weeks ago or like a month ago, and she was crying in our lobby, and she couldn't afford the treatments. She was an alcoholic and saw one of our posts on social media, and she was just completely wrecked. And like Christina and I just looked at each other and we're like, we'll treat you. You know, so we treat and listen, like a lot of it's not really money that we're raising to treat the people. Christina and I actually just donate most of these treatments. But, you know, it would be great if we could take some donations. But like the thing is that, you know, I'm an empath. I just don't want people to suffer anymore. And, you know, like everybody needs access to this stuff. You know, it's like, listen, I'm not trying to name drop, but it's just a cool story. It's like, you know, I was in Miami and Michael Pollan was having a book release event, and like I was speaking to him and he's like, so listen, man, he's like, if we didn't get any of the other compounds, he's like, do you think ketamine's enough? And I was like, absolutely. You know, like there's not too many. I mean, listen, I'm a huge fan of all the other ones. Don't get me wrong. But like the success rate with ketamine is ridiculous. You know, it's like you have so many people that are getting off of all of their pharmaceutical medications. It's really not very often that the medication, that ketamine doesn't work for people. And so it's like, you know, we have it right now. And I think that's another frustrating point for me. Sorry about that. I think, it's another frustrating point for me is that we have access to a medication right now that is giving people some of the most profound psychedelic experiences a human being can have. And people call up and it's like, well, oh, it's not mushrooms. Okay, I don't want to do that. And it's just like,
yes, people always want that. Yeah, they're always looking for that now.
You got it.
Yeah, but this is the only legal access, right?
Yeah.
How can we make it more affordable, aka insurance coverage? So, but if that's the difficult part, is who's going to pay for the research to get insurance to cover it? I know Kimberly with the Ketamine Task Force, they're trying to get the research studies and the funding done so we could do longevity studies so that we can actually get it covered by insurance, and that would be transformative. But it's time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you have your foundation, because that was going to help those in the interim. And even in our clinic, we try and we will give, you know, we always sponsor a veteran once a month. So if you ever have a veteran that's on our coast, you know, we do sponsor those. But it's difficult, you know, it's not just the ketamine, right? You guys implement, you know, the lifestyle and the different things to implement. What things do you kind of push, and what other things do you provide in your clinic to help support it?
You know, like the ketamine is literally just listen, it's a catalyst and a tool. Okay. And
Exactly.
Very effective tool and a very effective catalyst, especially with the increased dopamine levels, because now I'm starting to feel good. And now I'm motivated to start doing healthier things in my life, maybe exercising, or just like, you know, I had a lady tell me today, she's like, I did my laundry. She's like, I had the hardest time doing my laundry, and I've had piles of laundry that wasn't really a necessity that I kept pushing off to the side. And she's like, and I did it all, you know? So it's like, it really ignites that fire within people to start doing things that they might not have wanted to do before because the depression was so bad. But the truth is like, the ketamine's just the beginning of the journey. All right. You know, and like now it's the healthy lifestyle practices. Now it's about ketamine is a chemically induced meditation at the deepest level possible. And they've done studies on the brain where, people that are heavy, really experienced meditators and people on ketamine kind of like have the same brain waves that are happening.
Yeah.
Literally. So like meditation's really the answer. So like you have to, and this new neuroplasticity happening when you're in these sessions, you're literally training your mind to go into meditative states. So like meditation, breath work, a lot of people don't even realize when they are full of anxiety that if they took a couple minutes to just do some really deep breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, and oxygenate their body, their anxiety would probably go away. I go to the gym 5 days a week. I sit in the sauna after I train. I run 1.25 miles before I train every single day. I eat all organic foods, non-GMO. I drink natural spring waters. It's like what we put in here determines the way we feel up here. And like what I watch determines the way I feel up here. What I listen to, it's like I try not to listen to the music that I used to listen to years ago. Like, all kinds of derogatory things. And it's like, especially a lot of this rap music. We are biological computers at the end of the day. And at all times we're being programmed and we don't even realize it. So it's like, now I need to be mindful and program myself properly.
Exactly. Yeah. I always tell patients, it's, what do you expose yourself to? I used to be stressed and anxious, but I listened to news podcasts and watch the news. I always had the news in the background, and the news is all about trying to sell fear and try to sell negativity because that's what people like negative stuff. And the anxiety was so bad, it transformed just by not doing that. Now I listen to, just either meditations or positive podcasts, mindset podcasts, and I definitely don't watch the news. I do not watch the news.
The music that I listen to now is like mostly electronic music, electronic dance music without words, things like that. And like you were saying, like I don't watch the news at all anymore. The one thing that like we do as a society is, it doesn't matter like what political side that you're on, or if you are, deeply into politics or whatever, but like it's always the other side's fault, and so like I can sit here and project my anger and my accountability onto the actions of other people or what's happening in the world and all of these unjust things. But the truth is like, all I can do is focus on me. Like, that's the only thing I can control is like what I'm putting in here, what I'm putting in my mouth to eat, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, all of these things. And like, the only way out is in. You have to go in and do the work. And I call all of the other stuff chatter, and it's like, I'm not trying to be insensitive. I know there's a lot of horrible things that are happening in the world, but like, I truly, me getting upset about all of that stuff doesn't affect it in a positive way, because we're using the laws of attraction at all times, whether we know it or not. And so like, if I'm frustrated and upset all of the time because of all of the unjust things that are happening, it's manifesting into my life and I'm attracting more of it. So it's like, I believe we are the manifestors of reality and the co-creators of existence. And if I stay laser focused on working on myself and helping other people heal, that's how we transform humanity. That's how we actually change the world. All of the other stuff is just distractions, in my opinion.
Yeah, because if you can't actually do anything about it, people say, oh, you have to know what's going on in the world. Yes, but what am I doing about it? So if I'm not doing anything about it, all I'm doing is poisoning my mind.
So it's like the more that we progress with psychedelics and we okay, Ram Dass said it, all I can do is work on me and all you can do is work on you. That's it. That's the key. Yeah. So but we might get to a point at which I think we will in the near future where, MDMA, I've been talking about this for years, but I'm glad MAPS is going to be trying to spearhead something on conflict resolution with MDMA. I used to joke around and put all these world leaders that are fighting with each other in a room and give them all MDMA, and I bet transform.
Yeah,
and come out hugging each other, telling each other that they love each other, and it's like, MDMA did that for me. It's a very heart opening drug medicine, and I used it in a recreational sense, but I went from being going to rap concerts and there was fights all the time and people getting shot in parking lots and SWAT teams in the parking lots after the shows. And then I started getting into the EDM industry, and it's there was a lot of MDMA use, and I never saw any fights. like everybody got along really well. It was this beautiful energy that was there. And, like psychedelic medicines gave me the ability to love myself enough so I could actually love other people. I mean, because that's where it all starts.
Well, that's the frequency. That's the frequency for everyone. It's just love, love. What do you see coming about in 2024 with psychedelics? Ketamine is progressing nicely. And what do you find is the future coming this year? So much, I feel.
So, I mean, like, MAPS, we all know about the MAPS, in July, around July, hopefully MDMA is supposed to go through. We've been hearing about that for the last few years. So keep our
Yes. Okay.
But like the thing is that I know it all, like the veteran community is really our ally in this angle. I mean, people, the veterans, they served our country. They put their life on the line and we kind of just left them hanging. And the efficacy of what these medicines are doing for our veteran community is just astounding. So, I feel that the more veterans and first responders and success stories that we have with them, and these guys guys and gals getting on their soapboxes and screaming from the rooftops, kind of like what, like with what I do with my story and stuff like that. I think it's all about destigmatizing these things, breaking the taboos and stigmas, associated with these medicines. And so I'm a very big believer that MDMA will go through. I do believe psilocybin will actually follow, the efficacy of what they're showing with psilocybin for even just like, nicotine abuse. Johns Hopkins University did a study with that. I know that Imperial College of London, they're doing studies for psilocybin for heroin addicts. I know it works. I had a 6-gram mushroom trip where I had a oneness experience, and I quit drinking and using cocaine from that experience. And so, I know it works, and it's just a matter of time. We just need to figure out how to make this digestible for everybody and let people know that, a lot of these medicines were misused and abused, just like anything else can be. But when used properly in the therapeutic setting, as a tool for meditation, they can transform this healing journey in a positive direction exponentially faster than any of these pharmaceutical medications out there are doing.
100%, especially with the integration and be able to process even your first deep experience, having that process and no integration. That's why you continued using. Imagine if you had that support and all that through that discovery and how to be able to apply it and actually integrate it into your life. You might have had a sooner cleanse.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why, listen, integration is key. It's like we can have these, Alan Watts said it. It's like, psychedelic medicines are like a telephone receiver. You put the receiver up to your ear, you listen to the message, but it's important to put the receiver back down and apply what you've learned to your life. And pardon me, and integrating these experiences is really the recipe for success. You have these amazing, beautiful journeys, and listen, like, I think that's one of the reasons why I ended up having so much success with my psychedelic experiences is like, I received all of this guidance and like these downloads of information and like basically the answers to what I needed to do to make my life better. And I just took it like really seriously. Like, I listened to it. It wasn't just like this, wow, that was an amazing trip. And like, it was so cool. And like, I got all, and then like, you don't apply what you've learned to your life. I basically took it as like, okay, this is the gospel and this is what I need to do. And bam, ended up transforming everything.
And I hope those that are contemplating psychedelics now for their healing, take it seriously. When you're younger, people take psychedelics. It's fun. Let's have a good time. And then they say, oh, I had a bad trip, even though I don't know that there's such thing as a bad trip because they just needed integration. And I'm sure something came out very important for them in that sense. But it's really applying it and taking it seriously. It's not just fun and games, although sometimes it can be, but it's all about learning and growing and releasing all those subconscious stories.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
So thank you so much for coming on, Charles. I know this has been a long time coming. So
thanks for having me. And listen, thank you very much for what you're doing for the world. I really appreciate you. You are one of the people out there that's doing it the right way. So I really commend you for that.
Oh, thank you. You as well. I'm so happy we connected.
For sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining me on this week's episode of Psychedelic Healing. You have a beautiful night.